Okay, so be honest with me today. Do I look like a funky librarian or what? Because that's sort of how I feel. And you know what? For today's video, that is appropriate. Hey, welcome to my video. If you're from my Instagram, I love you. And if you're not from my Instagram, love you all the same. Welcome to another episode of Monthly Book Club, a series here on my channel where I tell you exactly what I read this month and what I rated. So, a couple of little disclaimers before we begin. As always, number one, I am never here to bash authors or their books. Honestly, I think authors are incredible and I love reading, so I literally do not know what I would do without them. I am here to tell you my personal and honest opinion about the books that I have purchased and read, but with that being said, I don't feel like that there is a necessity to be rude, so I'm never gonna do that, and that is never my intention. Another thing that is not my intention is to discourage you from reading anything, really. Even if I rate a book as did not finish or if I rate it low, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that you shouldn't read it. If you want to read it, I think that you absolutely still should. I highly encourage it. And I would also love to know your thoughts about it in the comments down below. One more thing before we begin, I'm gonna pop up some pictures here on the screen for you, which explain how I rate my books personally. This is sort of mostly the way that I rate books. However, it is always subject to change and vibes, you know? And also, all of these videos are pretty much spoiler free as much as they can be. If I do spoil a big plot in the book, I do always warn you though, so there's that. Okay girl, okay, let's take a little breath, let's get us some little water, a little snack, and let's begin. So the first book that we're starting off with this month is The Mark of Dreams and Destruction. As was book one, this is also a sci-fi romance novel. Let's give it a quick little recap if you don't know what it is. So when she was really young, Cara Lavigne's best friend gets kidnapped by an alien empire that is currently the ruler. And because of this, Cara Lavigne really just feels like they must be stopped. So because of this, she aligns herself with the rebellion in order to stop them. But obviously, as years go by, she infiltrates herself within the enemy directly. And at that point, lines sort of start to get blurred because she starts to discover that not everything was as black and white as she previously thought it was. I talked about the first book in this series in, I believe, last month's video. And in that video, I believe that I was just a little bit harsh. I judged the series too quickly, in my opinion. If you want to know what I said about the book, watch that video first, girl. I don't have time to re-explain myself. But basically, I still feel like what I said reigns true. However, after you also start reading the second book, everything does start to make much more sense, and the issues that I was having with the first book do not at all repeat themselves in the second book. So I definitely feel like that this was a really good series overall. Specifically, the storyline is just so interesting, and I fell even more in love with the main female character, Cara Lavigne. She really is a badass. And regarding the main male characters, okay, I'm gonna say something controversial yet brave. I know we all say a lot of the times that we love morally gray characters, you know, not in real life, in literature, okay? And I am obviously one of those people. However, Malakyte, the sort of main male character in my head in this book, is not only morally gray, but I would venture to say he's definitely morally black. He is so the villain, and there's just simply no other way to excuse his actions or to look at him as anything other than that. And yet, all that was playing in my head while I was reading about this man was that meme, he's a good man, Savannah. He's just in a bad situation right now. That's literally how I view Malakyte, and I'm so sorry, but I'm really not that sorry about it, girl. He is such a complex and interesting, delicious, villainous character that I live for him. There's no other way to put it than absolutely livingforhim.com. And so I'm obsessed to see what's gonna become of him and the whole situation that transpired in book 2 in book 3, which apparently is coming out next January. And I don't know how I'm gonna wait that long because this storyline really does have me hooked, but I am gonna wait and read that nonetheless. Now, this might be a little tiny spoiler alert, so you might want to skip this, but Gav has now at this point point decided that he's gonna go rescue Cara Lavigne. And I really think that's cool because in book 1, her whole mission was to rescue him. So it's all coming back around and it's really well fitted together. So this for me was definitely a 5-star read. Now, as far as the spicy scale, if you're not a fan of spice, you will be a fan of this book because I rated 1 chili pepper. Barely anything happens, but it really is that good. So now we can move on. Next up, we actually have a series. I read all 3 books of the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and while I am gonna rate them individually, of course, I am gonna give you just a quick synopsis for all 3 of them at this point, mostly focused on book 1 because I don't want to give away too much of the premise of book 2 and 3 because that could potentially spoil book 1 for you. So first of all, it is a sort of fantasy sci-fi romance novel, and it's about Miss Evangeline Fox, who honestly just wants to marry the love of her life and be with him forever, but she finds out that he's actually gonna end up marrying her stepsister. So she is obviously very distraught, and to hopefully stop this, she goes to the charming Prince of Hearts, Jax, and makes a bargain with him to hopefully stop this wedding. Now, the wedding is actually stopped, but of course, not without its consequences, as she starts to discover really quickly that bargaining with the Prince of Hearts was really not the move. And it may have been more trouble than it was worth. And that's all I'm gonna say, because honestly, these books are very much not predictable, so I don't want to spoil anything for you. But anyways, we can now move on to talking about each book individually. So let's start with Once Upon a Broken Heart. I honestly loved getting thrown into this world. I rated this book 5 stars. I'm just gonna say it. It was very interesting. You are immediately thrown into this whole new magical realm that you don't know the rules of, which I personally love. And I would say that it is definitely very unique and super fun. Even just the descriptions of this realm, I would love to see this adapted for television or a movie. I feel like it would be so gaggy. But anyway, we're talking about the book now. There definitely are 2 major plot twists at about 59% and I think maybe 72%. And there is a cliffhanger at the end. Now, I know some people love that, some people hate it. I definitely was like, oh my god, what's about to happen? I did enjoy it though. Overall, the read was very gaggy. It does sort of loosely remind me of that TV show Once Upon a Time, not by the realm or the rules of the world, but just generally the magical vibes. So I think that if you love that, you're gonna love this. Now, as far as book 2 and book 3 go, I rated both of those 4 stars, and I'm gonna explain to you why. Also, all of these are literally sitting at a 0 chili pepper spice rating. They're not spicy at all. Now, talking about book 2, I definitely would say that there are some cool twists and turns here as well, but I do find myself feeling that I wish there was just some more yearning between Jax and Eve here. I do generally feel that way about almost any books anyway, but I found myself really feeling that for book 2. I wish that there were more scenes like that one scene when they were in the inn. If you know, you know. If you don't, that's okay. But I wish that there was more there to explore. Now, moving on to book 3, which again was 4 stars as well. So at this point, I started feeling like there was just so much buildup for Eve and Jax, and ultimately, I personally felt like there just wasn't enough payoff. I would have loved to see more, and that doesn't necessarily mean smut. You can do so many things. I, as a fan of the slow burn genre, already lose my mind if they like touch hands for 0.5 seconds. And I would have done so here as well, and you bet that I actually did, but I wish there were more scenes like that. But nevertheless, like I said, the series overall was very fun and unique, and I loved getting to be a part of this world. Batter Up by Brittany Ann. Okay, so this is a reread. I did read this book, I don't even remember when, but I do tend to come back to Miss Brittany Ann's books quite often if I'm sort of in a little bit of a rut. She's one of my comfort authors that I just know if I read her book, I'm just gonna be inspired to read all over again, and I'm gonna enjoy whatever I read. So that's why I went back to this one. Quick synopsis: this is a dark romance, and this could also be considered a baseball romance as well. But if you think you're gonna be reading about typical baseball players and blah blah, you are so wrong, and you need to take a seat And as a matter of fact, you know, just pick up a little glass of water, pick up your little coffee and Red Bull, and listen to what I have to say, okay? So, the book is about Gwen and Dean is a professional baseball player who breaks Gwen's heart. Gwen obviously takes this really hard, but she does move on from it, and as soon as she does, who goes crawling back and calling her and contacting her again? You guessed it, it's Dean. Now, I'm not somebody who's usually a super fan of second chance romances, but this was so good. Because there's definitely a very interesting twist there. If you thought Dean was calling her just because he missed her, oh no, he wasn't. It's because she's in danger and he needed to save her. As it turns out, he left her the first time around because he thought that's what would be best for her. Go figure, it was actually the worst option. He's just intending to check on her, see if she's safe, and that's all he cares about. He's not really planning to get back together with her, but obviously they see each other and, well, you know what happens, and I'm not gonna spoil it too much. So I rated this book 5 stars and 2 chili peppers. 2 chili peppers is sort of my kind of baseline, but that does not mean that it's not spicy. In fact, if I give it 2 chili peppers, it's actually pretty spicy, and there are multiple scenes in there. And 5 stars obviously because I had fun kicking and giggling my feet the whole way through. Now, as soon as you begin this story, there's an unexpected twist pretty much in the beginning, which I personally love because it definitely had me on my toes. And it was also a very quick read for me because it is a page turner. One thing, I forgot the ending. I must have blocked it out because I was literally shocked for the second time around reading this book and reading the ending. I was like, oh my god, that's right. So I'm not gonna say much except it's definitely painful, very painful, cool, and also very unexpected, but I feel like I could very well send Miss Brittany Ann my therapy bill after reading what I read. And that's all I'm gonna say. Moving on to Hopeless. Now, I will say this is not my first book from this author. I actually believe this might not be my first book in this series either, because this is book number 5 of the series. Now, I personally was told that you could read them as standalones, and I basically did that. Again, I'm not sure. I think I read one of the books prior to this one, but I also read that one as a standalone, and at this point it's been so long that I completely forgot about it. That's the beauty of reading quite often and quite quick. You forget about a plot in 2 days time. But yeah, all of this to say that I read this as a standalone, but now I'm thinking I should go back and read book 1 through however many there are in one sitting, barely breathing at 3 a.m. because I so enjoyed this read. Let's get into it. So first things first, this is a very cozy small town romance. It's about Beau and Bailey, and Beau is very esteemed in this small town. Ex-military man with a great last name, everybody respects him, and Bailey is a bartender with a last name that not everybody in town favors, shall we say. Through no fault of her own, she has a very rocky family, but those are the cards that she's been dealt. Now, Beau here does not believe that a last name makes such a big difference, and they make a bet. Ooh, I love when they make a bet, girl, where they pretend that they're fake engaged just to see how everybody in town will treat them differently. But obviously through this fake engagement, very real feelings happen, and that's where I become obsessed with this book. Let's get into it. So this is a 5-star read, plain and simple. 2 chili peppers, 5 stars from me. One thing to note though is that there is an age gap. Beau is 35 and Bailey is 22, and the concept of her virginity also gets brought up into this book, but in my opinion it's all done very well, and I personally was eating all of this up. I loved the main male character Beau. He was definitely such a gentleman, and I also really loved Bailey. She's sassy, and I love me a sassy main female character. There was also great tension and great yearning between the two of them. I was really rooting for them the whole way through, and overall I feel like this was such a warm, fun, cozy, delicious small town romance read. This honestly is the baseline. Now from this moment on, every small town romance that I read, I will probably be comparing it to this one because the amount of cozy fun I had reading this book was truly unmatched. As far as the smut goes, it definitely isn't vulgar or debaucherous in any way in my opinion, but it does do a great job of painting a great mental image in your head. But anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna be reading way more from this author from now on. So I think that will actually be it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, you know I love you down. If you like this video, then please consider liking and subscribing. And I, as always, will see you in my next video. Bye.